Good evening, everyone. Welcome to middle school. Are you ready for it? My name is Christine Lai, and I'm the executive director and co-founder of Special Education Legal Fund. And I'm so pleased that everyone has joined us this evening. Before we go any further, I'd like to welcome and thank our corporate sponsors and partners. Their generous support makes this webinar program series, as well as so much else of what we do, possible. First, I'd like to acknowledge WealthSpire Advisors at the platinum level, as well as Eagle Hill School at the platinum level. At the gold level, I'd like to acknowledge the Winston Preparatory School group. And at the silver level, we are grateful for the support of Fusion Academy, our friends at Villa Maria School, Chapel Haven Schliefer Center, and American School for the Deaf. Finally, at the bronze level, we are incredibly grateful to our friends, the Pinnacle School and the Spire School. So thank you so much to all of our corporate sponsors and friends. We could not do what we do without your support. For those of you who are not familiar with us, I'd like to take a moment to introduce Special Education Legal Fund. Special Education Legal Fund, or SELF, was founded in 2018 to provide knowledge, resources, and support to families in need with children in the special education system. We do this predominantly through our two grants programs, the Advocate Program and the Attorney Program, which I'll talk about in a minute. And since 2018, we have provided over $1.1 million in grants for legal and advocacy support to hundreds of families in school districts in Connecticut and Westchester County, New York. As I mentioned before, our grants programs are the Advocate Program, which is a program that provides families in need with up to $1,000 in advocacy support from a qualified non-attorney advocate, and our Attorney Grant Program, which provides families in need with $6,000 in legal support from a qualified special education attorney. The application period for December will open on Friday, November 22nd. And it's going to be a little bit different than previous application cycles because we're going to close applications a little bit early on December 10th. And have interviews due by December 16th. Just because of the holiday season, we will notify families by November 20th. If you have interest in this program or in anything that we do, please visit our website. You will begin the application process at www.spedlegalfund.org, and then you'll click on the little button that says apply for grant. If you can see this QR code, you can scan that also. I will put our website in the chat later on in the webinar so that you have that and don't have to write it down right now. Just a little commercial for our upcoming December webinar. Our next webinar is on December 4th, and it's going to explore the nuances of divorce and special education law. Now, this isn't going to be a family law webinar. Really, what we're doing is trying to explore, what a parent should consider in a divorce situation when you have a child with special needs or special education needs. We have a great group of lawyers that have joined us for that. Attorney Jeff Forte from the Forte Law Group, as well as Attorney Laura Hennigan are joining us for this. And we're really excited. You can sign up for this. Sounds weird to say you're excited for a webinar on divorce, but whatever. Anyway, please sign up for this webinar. It is a really interesting, it's a new topic for us, and I'm very excited to be bringing it to all of you. In January, just to push out a little bit further, our January webinar, the first webinar of 2025, is going to focus on tuition reimbursement and transportation. For those of you who don't know what tuition reimbursement is, it is, it's outplacement, but, it's about applying for reimbursement for your tuition after you've already enrolled your child at the school. And it's a slightly different process. And I think that the attorneys that we have joining us for this webinar, Attorney Paul Barger from Barger and Gaines and Andy Feinstein, are going to be able to shed a lot of light on this topic. We're also going to talk about the very important and very interesting question of transportation and busing, which is something that we get asked all the time. And Lara Damashek, who is the CSE representative at the Windward School, as well as being a special education advocate, and the chair of the board of SELF, actually, will be joining us for our January 15th webinar. So I hope you can join us for that as well. Finally, well, not finally, here we are. Meredith, I'm very pleased to announce, is joining the Five Timers Club this tonight. I think this is your first webinar that's not on outplacement. So this is a new thing. I mean, you've done outplacement, 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 residential outplacement. So this is going to be new for you. Meredith is a legal titan in Southern Fairfield County. And a towering presence in our community of Greenwich, Connecticut, as well as Fairfield County, representing students and families, particularly in special education law matters. We are so pleased that Meredith is joining us again, and welcome to our webinar tonight, Meredith. Thanks.
Thank you.
I'm also very, very happy to welcome. This is a great panel tonight. I'm very excited. I'm really pleased to welcome Stacey Tié to the webinar series. Stacey's, this is your third time. This is your third, a three-timer, a three-peat, whatever you want to call it. And you've previously guested on, I think, how to read an IEP, as well as, back to school advice from advocates. Stacey is a professional non-attorney special education advocate at the law office of Laura Hennigan. She has extensive experience in all aspects of, special education advocacy, a particular interest in dyslexia and reading issues. And we're really, really thrilled to have Stacey join us this evening. Thanks so much for joining the panel. Not finally, we are really thrilled to welcome Dr. Emily Altman from the Waverly Group to our panel this evening. This is Emily's first webinar. But the Waverly Group is near and dear to my heart. I don't think I have done much in my children's educational development and careers without consulting either Lauren Reardon or Elisa Rohde. So love the Waverly Group. Really thrilled to that Dr. Altman is able to join us tonight, particularly because I think that when you're talking about middle school and middle school readiness, and whether a child what a child looks like at the cusp of this important and transitional time, having the viewpoint of a clinical psychologist, especially one as renowned as Dr. Altman, is really, really important. So thank you so much for joining our panel, Emily, Dr. Altman.
Thanks for having me.
And finally, last but not least, he really needs no introduction. Really pleased that Bill DeHaven is taking the reins from me tonight as moderator for this panel. He knows way more about everything school related, everything child related than I do. This is your seventh webinar, Bill, and your first as moderator. Ooh, if you don't count, the school showcases and whatnot. So, I think that's a record. Anyway, Bill is currently the head of school at Villa Maria School in Stamford. Prior to joining Villa Maria in 2020, Bill was really a visionary educator at the Winston Preparatory School in New York, where he was instrumental in pretty much all of the things that, that at least I think of when I think of Winston. One of the things I love the most about Bill is that Bill's a member of the board of directors at Self. But, when you get people's bios, there's always, things in their bio, like, someone's bio is a reflection of what they want you to know about them, right? And, Bill pays special attention and has a little site, which you can see in the bio here, if you look behind the photographs, that he spent 2 years as a Peace Corps volunteer in Mali. And I think that's amazing and really telling about the kind of person Bill is. So welcome, Bill, to your first session as moderator.
Thank you.
We are thrilled to have you. Just because it's it's a webinar, and this is what I have to do. Here's the disclaimer. This panel is presented for informational purposes only. This webinar is intended as a resource for families who are navigating the special education system in Connecticut or New York, and is not intended to provide legal advice, support, or assistance to any particular individual, nor is it intended to replace the advice and counsel of a qualified special education attorney. Families in need of legal advice, support, or assistance should contact a special education attorney licensed to practice in their state of residence. to discuss the specific needs of their individual student. This webinar should not be construed as an endorsement by Special Education Legal Fund of any of its representatives, of any of the participating attorneys, advocates, or other professionals in the panel, nor should it be construed as an endorsement of any school or school represented invited to appear in this panel. So welcome, middle school. Are you ready for it? I'm going to turn this over to, you're ready for it. That's good. I'm going to turn it over to Bill.
Thank you, Christine. I'm so happy to join you all, especially to be here with Meredith, Stacey, Emily. Middle school can be a really exciting time for our kids. It can be a very overwhelming time for us as parents. It's the time in our kids' lives when the progression from self-control, the external self-control that we insist on as parents, those external controls we hope to infuse in our kids so that it becomes an internal self-control. And for me, that developing that self-control is a lot of what happens in middle school. Our kids challenge us in ways that we didn't expect. Our kids challenge themselves in ways that we didn't expect. It's very exciting, but they have to be emotionally ready. They have to be skilled. They have to be self-assured enough, and that puts a lot of pressure on us, especially when we are families with kids who are already struggling in school and they don't often feel like they belong or connected in school. So that's why we're here tonight. And we've got these amazing folks to kind of talk us through. So I'm going to begin with a question that we could probably spend all night on because it's broad. What are the skills, academic, social, and emotional, what do our kids need in order to succeed in middle school? Emily, do you want to start as the psychologist on here, and then we can go around and talk?
Yes, so it definitely is a very broad question because there are a lot of skills and abilities that kids will have and they will quickly learn. Also, people are not very homogeneous. They're not the same across all three categories. So they could have a lot of academic skills and not be as strong in social emotional. Most people are that way. So it's not like answering this question, parents can say, okay, I've got all three, my kid's ready to go. Most likely your kid doesn't have all the skills, and that's why they're going to school to get them. If your kid had all the skills they needed, they wouldn't need to go. But certainly socially, it would be helpful if they had the ability to interact with peers and interact with adults, interact with peers one-on-one and in small group, as well as in larger groups. It is somewhat hard to um, it's kind of different if you can be with one or two people, but students will be exposed to scenarios in which there are bigger classrooms, probably bigger recess, auditorium, cafeteria. So it'll be helpful for kids to be able to tolerate and regulate all sorts of social scenarios. After that, everything is game. I mean, middle school is such a hard place socially. Emotionally, same thing, that we want them to have some distress tolerance, some skills for being able to manage themselves from, let's say, scale of 1 to 10. If they can stop themselves, 1 through 5, they can catch themselves and kind of bring themselves back down, or they're turning themselves around quickly, or quicker than when they were in third grade or fourth grade, that would be helpful. And then academically, again, that's a really hard question. I might want to bounce that off one of the other panelists here, because again, it's such a broad range of skills that kids can have and still learn and flourish and get out of school what we want them to be getting out of school.
So, Stacey, if the academic skills, we're here because our kids are struggling in school, and often throughout elementary school, we can rely on that one elementary school teacher and maybe the folks who are providing the reading or speech or OT. But in middle school, there's an entire big team. And as a parent, I can feel lost. Who do I go to when I have questions about, is there academic skill instruction happening, or is it just social studies and science?
Yeah, well, I think the timing of this webinar is actually really well planned, Christine. So nice job, Special Ed Legal Fund, because after the holiday break, that's when schools are going to start talking about transitioning to middle school. So I think this is a great time to have this so that parents can start thinking about these things and start talking to their current teams about the skills their child has and what they see for them at the next level, so that they can start having those conversations now. Yeah, when you move to the middle school, they have a different teacher for each subject. It's a lot of executive functioning skills pull in immediately. Day one, they have to know where they're supposed to be, when they're supposed to be. They have different teachers for each classes, as I already stated, but they're going to have to learn the expectations of each of those teachers, where, as you said, Bill, in elementary school, it's really just one teacher and then your specials teachers and your services teachers. But in the middle school, you have so many different teachers that you have to learn their expectations, their styles, and how to navigate that. That's a lot of skills for kids, and it starts day one. For parents, it's overwhelming because they don't know who to talk to. Whereas in elementary school, it's the general ed teacher and the special ed, or the case manager. So one of the things that when we go to the articulation or transition PPTs in the spring, to get ready for the transition in the fall, that is one of the very first things I talk about at the PPT. Let's set up a communication plan now. And I always set up a review, revise PPT or a team meeting, depending on the child, for October ish, so that the child has a chance to start the school year, have some time to kind of figure it out. You can kind of see how it's going as a parent, and the school can kind of figure out your child as well. And then you have a team meeting or a PPT already set up in the fall to see how they're transitioning. Did what we planned in the spring at that PPT, is that the right plan? Do we need to make some adjustments now that my child is here and we're seeing in real time what's happening? So, and then throughout that, I do like to set up check-ins with the case. The case manager is still really your go-to person. Middle schools also like to remind you that the school counselors are also people to go to, because they're in charge of the schedule. But I still find that really the case manager is really your go-to person. It's their job to make sure that the entire team understands your child, understands your child's needs, and can work with the different teachers if there's an issue that pops up within that classroom. So really your case manager is still your go-to person.
Okay, so Meredith, now Stacey set us up. We had this great transition meeting in the spring. We have a follow-up in October, and we show up at that meeting in October, and it's a completely new group of people. They don't know my kid yet, even though it's now mid-October, say. And I realize I need to change some goals or change something on the 504. What do I do?
Well, you have to be really upfront about what you need, and you need to advocate for that in that meeting. I mean, I find that, of course, when people get to me, things are going wrong, and the places where I see there being big issues are, for example, the model for resource room or academic lab or whatever you're going to call it, changes at middle school, and they try to they put it more toward homework help than they do like direct teaching of skills. And your child may not be ready for that yet. Your child may still have deficits that need to be addressed with really explicit teaching. So you should advocate for that and not back down,
Yeah.
and I know Stacey wouldn't. So, the other places where I see issues are social skills big time.
Yep.
Very few public schools are really good at teaching social skills. They make it either a lunch bunch or a couple of objectives about perspective taking in the counseling room with a school psychologist. And that is not going to do it. I mean, that at Villa Maria, you have a different approach. Winston Prep has a different approach than that, one that's more in vivo. Let's actually teach those skills in an evidence-based way, and make sure these kids can deploy it. So again, you're going to need to advocate for what your child actually needs, which is that explicit teaching of social skills, and especially things like what is a friend really?
Mhm.
How do you make a friend? How do you keep a friend? How do you tell whether someone is a safe friend or not?
Mhm.
Because some of the worst cases I see are where our kids are vulnerable to being taken advantage of because they don't understand that.
Yeah.
And other kids talk them into doing things that can just completely ruin the rest of their middle school experience. Do things that are taped and circulated around the community and, stuff like that. So, or just, getting bullied mercilessly or things like that. So I think the social skills piece is just enormous. And it's something that you're going to have to work very hard to get the public school to address in an effective way. And you might be trying to make them you will be trying to make them change their canned approach to it,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
you need to.
And you made a good point about the academic lab or resource room or learning center, whichever they call it, that it does become more of a homework help place. And
Yeah.
really what the skills that you want your child to learn in middle school are study skills. How do I prepare and study for a quiz and test? What do I need to do? What are some strategies for that? How do major executive functioning skills that we've got to learn how to organize, time manage, plan, prioritize, and self-advocacy. So you want to start talking to your child about what their accommodations in their program is. Now is the time to start like cueing them in on this is what this is, so that they can go to their teacher and say, you know what, I couldn't get my homework done. I need more extra time, and extra time is in my accommodation. I know that for my own children, when they were in middle school, my child forgot to turn homework in, and that is going to happen all the time in middle school. And I said to my child, go to your teacher and go say, I forgot to turn my homework in. Can I please finish it and turn it in now for some sort of credit? And my child looked at me and goes, that doesn't work. They won't do that. And I said, of course they will. The teachers want to help you. They know you're learning these skills. It's not just about turning your homework in. It's about learning how to go to your teacher and ask for help and say, can I do this? And I said, I guarantee if you go and ask your teacher, they're going to help you. And they're going to say, yeah, sure, turn it in and I'll give you partial credit. They need to learn how to do that, because they need to leave the middle school with study skills, executive functioning skills, and self-advocacy skills, because those are going to be required for high school. And that's a different webinar, but
yeah, but I mean, they back off even more then.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
So Emily, we self-advocacy, and I think that for me, I can't yet be a self-advocate unless I understand myself a little bit better. And we're talking a lot about the schools. What can I do at home to better help my kid understand their learning profile, their learning struggles, so that I can then be a better self-advocate at home?
So I think, and I wanted to jump in here, so I appreciate you calling on me. I think that it's really important just to be open with your kids. Obviously, there's some ways in which you're not going to share with them the nitty gritty of, I don't know how I'm going to get you to school and then get to work on time. Like, they don't need to know all about that. But knowing their profile, they should know if they have a 504 plan and if they have an IEP, they should absolutely know those words and what that means by the time they are entering into middle school. I have a ton of kids. I don't even want to say the words that they say. You've all heard it when they say, like, oh, well, that's because and they give some derogatory term. I'm like, no, 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 that's actually not what that means. What you have is a list of accommodations, and, oh, well, my friend does that because he's not smart enough. No, no, no. Like, again, there's educating, there's informing your kids on what all these words mean that are getting thrown around in like almost like potty talk, if you will, or locker talk, and they're all wrong, and letting their kids know what these words mean. And if these words apply to your child, you have a 504 plan. That means you have the right to ask for help. You can ask for extra time. You can blah, 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 and you can advocate for yourself. We all use that word now, and kids now know what that word means, because you have to be just open and direct with your kids. I also like, as a therapist, telling parents to point out, like, oh, wow, That's something like you did that really well. That's something you're really good at. Like helping kids understand their learning profile as you know it and as you've heard over and over again in parent-teacher conferences and in report cards and so forth. You have a picture of who your kid is in their areas of strength and areas of weakness, and you can be pointing that out to them along the way of, "Oh, you crush it with writing. You're so great with writing. Wow, this is amazing. And like, I know you have a test next week. We should probably start studying now because that is something that is a little bit harder for you." So again, just kind of being open with them about who they are, their learning profiles, and again, what these terms mean, especially if they pertain to your kid and kind of they um, what's available to them. They should know what their options are and what's open to them.
Yeah.
Oh, Bill, can I jump in?
Yes, you
Because
can.
you're the only, because I obviously I can't stand to sit on the sidelines. You are the only educator amongst us. I'm curious as to how as a teacher, you have a lot of kids that come to you, you as a sort of you're an elementary and a middle school, so and a high school now, but we talk about that later. How do you, as an educator, gauge if a child that's, one of your Villa kids is ready to return to a public middle school setting?
Thank you. That has to do with everything we were talking about now. It is. So we can talk about self-advocacy, and I think that the way I couch it with our kids here is we're teaching them to learn how to learn. So that's all that executive functioning skills. And a lot of my kids, when we can get our kids at a younger age to better understand themselves and why they're struggling so that I can work on the decoding, I can work on the comprehension, I can work on the social pragmatics, but really for a lot of our kids, more and more of our kids these days, it's the executive functioning skills. It's the learning how to learn. It's the self-activation. It is the self-determination. And when our kids are proactive and they are skilled in that way, I may not be a fluent reader yet. I know what I need to do. I better understand that I'm dyslexic, and I may always struggle with decoding, but I understand that now, and I can ask for my help now. It is when our kids are able to be really good self-advocates for themselves that I know that it's time for us to begin to talk to our families about it's time to go back. That's part of our goal at Villa for a lot of my kids is, can I get them back, and when can I get them back? It's the first conversation that I know a lot of our families here on this call want to know. My kids behind in reading, they're behind in math. They begrudgingly, the schools sometimes, well-intentioned schools, throw lots of resources at our kids. But like I think Meredith first talked about, that resource room, learning lab, it becomes homework help. It is not skill instruction. So our kids need explicit skill instruction. So when they get that skill instruction and they learn how to learn, even if it's still hard, they know that they know how to work hard. They know that they understand that they're going to have to work harder than some of their peers, and they make peace with that. That's when I know that they're going to be successful when they return.
Great.
So,
can I add a comment about
please.
the executive functioning, because it's so big right now and everyone's talking about it, and like you said, more and more kids are struggling with it, perhaps because the curriculum is getting harder or just out of left field, or perhaps everyone has just too much going on. Obviously, the world in our pocket that we have access to 24/7 is very difficult to inhibit impulses and sustain attention while having that all of that. It's really important to know that the typical brain doesn't develop, a woman's brain does not fully develop executive functioning until about 21 years old. And a man's brain, no offense, doesn't develop executive functioning till about 25 or 28 years old. There's many jokes in there, obviously, but I'll leave it.
Oh, I can confirm that from personal experience with my son.
I'm still waiting for my kids
the
to
research has
develop
been
that.
so
and I think that that's why we are the external control until our kids can develop the internal control.
I just got goosebumps. That's exactly what I was going to say. You think, oh, ready to go to middle school, so my kid's ready to have these skills. They do not. They are far from having these skills. So while the teachers are pulling away and now there's time management and across the school and how do I motor plan and the all of that.
And then there's this, and then this gets in the
And
way
there's
too.
that, because that's a very common fifth grade graduation present nowadays. Parents need to step in more and almost need to be aware of that themselves and say to their kid, listen, going into this, knowing the name of the game in middle school, I'm going to be helping you even, I'm going to be nudging you even more. I'm going to be Sunday night, we're going to have a meeting, or Saturday, Sunday, when we're driving to soccer practice or whatever, that's our set time. I'm going to check in. I'm going to blah, blah, blah. Parents need to be that outside frontal lobe, knowing that kids' own frontal lobe, executive functioning skills are not fully in place, and it needs to be known upfront. And I almost, again, I'm a psychologist, not an educator, but I would say that's more important than asking about what are you reading and the reading comp and blah blah. Let the educators do that. Like, let your kids talk to their teachers about the decoding skills and the so forth. Like, your job as parent, I would think, is to support your kid socially, emotionally, and the executive functioning stuff, and letting them know up front, like, this is like, oh, I'm gonna be so annoying about this, but like, you know, I got
One one quick thing about cell phones, if I could say, make sure you tell your kids that not to put anything in writing that they wouldn't want their principal to read. Because
they will.
Because they
They
will.
will.
Or your mom, or your
Right.
mom.
Or your mom, you know.
there's a breakdown. Kids would never say
Or the
anything,
police.
but
Or-
they put things in writing. There is a definite break. So kids also need that explicit instruction with how to have cell phones. So again, I'm giving you the cell phone, but no, for the first 6 to 9 months, I'm going to be watching it. Just like handing over the keys to a car. You don't just get the keys at 16. You take classes. You get instructed and explicit instruction. It needs to be the same, because again, with kids, there is some weird breakdown where they would never say these things face to face, but they put it in writing. I don't know how it falls apart that way.
So I think we're talking a lot about, there is so much responsibility on us as parents. And sometimes I get nervous. Oh my gosh, I don't want to be overwhelming. I don't want to be that nudge. But our kids entering middle school, as we've all said, need us to provide that structure. And our kids are going to want to push up and find the boundaries, but you have to provide those boundaries. They have to know, whenever you get that smartphone, I am going to be checking it. It's not because I'm nosy. It's not because I don't trust you. I just need to be involved in part of your life. And that's just the expectation. If you're going to get this device, it is my expectation for you, because it's hard.
Yeah, definitely check their phones and read them, set up,
and
what is it, 360 or whatever.
I sort of also want to throw out to Emily and maybe Stacey, because I haven't had kids of my own like in the same era, but another place where I see a big breakdown in the social skills arena is where they're playing games with friends online, and same kind of social interaction happens. And I see a lot of things being said or done that they would never do in person. I'm not sure how you supervise that, because I know nothing about these games, but
yeah, those games became huge in COVID, because that was how they
that was how they interacted, you know,
and that's how they socialized.
Yeah.
And it's okay for us, again, to be involved, asking and listening. And I think that it's really important that our kids know it. I'm not spying on you. This is part of what it is. I lost my train because
but you should absolutely spy on them, I think.
Oh, I think spying is fine. I think spying is totally
and I
fine.
think, but it's okay to tell you I'm going to do it. I'm
Part of the
going to
Yeah.
plug that phone in the kitchen or somewhere public. It doesn't belong in your bedroom, because I'm gonna see it. And it's hard for parents to do that. But Mom, Stacey doesn't have to do that. Meredith doesn't have to do that.
Classic.
Oh, and we have to, well, sorry, in my house, this is the expectation. And your kids may be angry in the beginning, but then there's a sense of safety.
Yes.
So I want to talk a little bit about, Stacey brought it up because I have, like Meredith, I have older boys who are adults and working, and I have a 13-year-old. And so I've watched the transition, I've watched the differences. And Stacey's right. I watched in COVID, kids were playing games and FaceTiming at the same time, and we were all very happy because our kids were connecting, they
Yes.
were together. But for our kids and many of our kids who have social pragmatic struggles, the conversations that they have online are the conversations that is their social communication, that is their safe place.
Yep.
It doesn't replace all five of us getting together and having a conversation in person.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
How do I foster that? How do I do that when this is how we all, our kids, some of us, we just connect that way?
So I think if there are, after school clubs or whatever that your child is involved in, I would throw a Friday night pizza party for whichever kids your friends want to have over and let them do whatever their club is. So Quiz Bowl is my house. So Quiz Bowl kids come over and we order pizza and cookies and we run trivia. So that would be how one way to do it. Yeah, that would be my advice, is like host the pizza party at your house.
Emily, do you have thoughts on how do we foster a connection for our kids? All kids is unbelievably important. And too often I'm seeing, not just with my kids here at Villa, but I'm seeing it with my son's friends, the connection is virtual. It's no longer connected.
Yeah, the other piece is be willing to be the taxi driver. I mean, there are many times where, Mom, can you go across town and pick up my friend and bring my friend, and then come get me and then bring us over here? And you just got to be willing to be the taxi driver. Yeah. And you get all your information when you're the taxi driver and you're quiet.
That is 100% true. Being the driver.
Because your kids' friends often tell you more than your own kid.
1000%.
Or your kids will tell you things when they're sitting next to you, not looking at you.
Yes.
Yes. For some reason, that's a real,
yep.
Pandora's box opening.
Yeah, I think, and again, it's hard because not everybody has the resources, the schedule, the availability to do it. But hosting things, offering to take a bunch of kids to dinner or to the soccer field or to the movies or drop them off at the mall. I do also really like limiting screens as much as possible. So if they can't be on screens, they've used up their 45 minutes or whatever is reasonable for that age, whether it's like weekday or weekend. Like I might as well do that, like really trying to limit that and then woo them, really wooing them in a big bad way, because it's that important to, like, I'm going here. Do you want to come with me and pick up sandwiches with me? Do you want to come this and that, and I'll drop you off at your friends or pick up your friends? I do also, a little unrelated, I like the idea of parents joining their kids and what they are doing virtually or digitally, as much as we hate or cringe at the idea of playing Five Nights at Freddy or whatever it is. If you join them in their activity that they love, you are showing interest in them, you are showing curiosity, you are showing humility, you are connecting with them. We're constantly asking them, oh, come with me to grandma's, and you do this for me, you do my activity that I need to have happen. I'm gonna, I don't know the word, but like, I'd like to be interested in you and what you're doing and how do you play this, and oh my God, and this and that. And there can be a lot of connection there. And it's also a good way to monitor what they're doing.
One of the other things that I've done that's worked is on a Saturday or Sunday morning, when they wake up, I will say, okay, you have until this time to make your plans for the day. And if you don't, I will make plans for you. Because you're not going to sit around on screens all day. So
we've talked a lot about connection, and often anxiety gets in the way of me being able to connect, wanting to connect. It's easier for me to bury myself. Okay, Mom, you told me I can't be on my device. I bury myself in some other activity because I don't know how to reach out and connect because of that anxiety, of which I think that lately as adults, our anxiety has skyrocketed, which means that the anxiety, just by virtue of being around us, our kids' anxiety has rocketed. What do we do? I know it's another broad question, but when our kids begin to show signs of that anxiety and shutdown, because that's more and more common. What are some of the strategies that we can use with our kids?
May I jump in?
Please.
Please.
Okay, so first, just to highlight really quickly, some signs of anxiety would be avoidance. Anxiety's presumed bestie is avoidance, but avoidance actually isn't a really good best friend. That she's the worst. She's a liar and she's not loyal. So, but if you see your kids avoiding, I don't want to do that. I don't want to be with her. I don't want to go there. I don't want to do that thing. Avoiding things is the number one way that you can guess there's your kids feeling anxiety. There's also a change in appetite, eating more or less. There's a change in sleeping more, sleeping less. Everyone thinks of anxiety as like biting your nails and tapping your feet, but actually in children, another one symptom of anxiety is irritability, which is way hard because kids these age are irritable. So it's hard to kind of parse out, is this irritability for anxiety or prepubescence, or they're going to high school and that's awful for everyone. But so those are the main things you're looking for, is the eating, sleeping, mood, increased tearfulness, and the avoidance, and withdrawing. So my number one favorite thing to do, and there's a lot of different approaches that use some sort of this approach, is to have the parents give validation. I see this is hard for you. I see you don't want to go. Oh, wow, that must be really uncomfortable. Because a lot of times us parents say, it'll be fine. It's a homecoming dance. They're awesome. Or Julie's going to be there. She's your neighbor. It'll be great. So the validating is a good first step of, I hear that you're uncomfortable, and then adding in the second part of confidence, which is, and you can handle it. You can do it. You've done it before. I'm here for you. We'll do it together. I'll help you out. So it's the validation of what's happening, and the confidence. And the two pieces are kind of like, I see you and I know you've got this.
Yeah, validation is huge in all situations: anxiety, stress, anger, frustration, all of that. So I always try to, again, talking about my kids a lot, but that's because they're these ages. Validating is key. I mean, even for me, if somebody just validates my own feelings, I immediately relax, and I can engage. And but I think the other thing is asking for help when you see your kid is struggling. That as soon as you notice it, ask for help. As soon as you see a change in your child, you need to be emailing your case manager and saying, I noticed this in my child. Are you noticing this at school? And do we need to have a conversation about this? And because you do not want to let things spiral, and you want to get ahead of them quickly. You want to be proactive. So definitely ask for help. And by asking for help, you're modeling for your child, when I'm struggling, I ask for help. So,
but again, your gut, you may have to lead the school district where they need to go.
yes. Yes.
Like, have you ever heard of Michelle Garcia Winner?
Yes.
I mean, I'm sure there's a school or two out there that does it right. I've run into like a speech pathologist here or there who's trained by Winner, in the Winner program or whatever. Occasionally there are spots where, something is going right, but generally most public schools do not know what they're doing in that space.
Yep.
And so you may have to do a little research, reach out to your contacts in the special education community, who do know about social skills, and bring that sort of evidence-based information to the team and tell them, I want you to implement this, to help my child learn the skills that he or she needs to learn.
Yep. There's also Zones of Regulation by Elise Kuiper. She's maybe a little bit more elementary, but I still use it certainly with 5th and 6th graders. There's also, I really like the approach that I just spoke of, is this SPACE approach, SPACE, which is by Dr. Eli Leibowitz. He's out of Yale, and that's a really great resource. I don't know the name of the book. You could find it anywhere, by Eli Leibowitz. And again, you could bring it
That's
into
the parent training program.
Yes, and then also everybody loves Ross Green, which is not
Yes.
specific to anxiety, but Ross Green not only works with parents and kids in a collaborative way, but also teaches school systems.
Right.
Hmm.
You can request that your school be trained in the collaborative problem solving used to be his approach, and now it's CPS,
It's
but it's
CPS, but it stands for something else. Yeah.
correct.
And I can
So
never remember what it is.
yeah, those are really great approach. All of that, zones of regulation, Michelle Garcia winner, Ross Green's CPS program are really great things to share with your school and with yourself and your community, your family, to
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
someone help.
What I love about Ross Greens is that he has the students involved in the problem solving. And back to your validation, it starts with, "Hey, I see you're struggling with this. What's up?" Literally, that's what he says. "What's up?" And you talk to your child and you say, "What's going on? Let's try to problem solve this together. What do you think? What have you tried? What should we try together? Here's what works for me. Here's what I think you should try." And you problem solve it together with your child. And it teaches them how to work with people and problem solving skills, and it's great.
And back to Meredith, going back to, the case manager, there's someone on your team. Your team in middle school is going to be big. There's someone on your team who you're going to be able to hopefully identify. Maybe it's the SLP, maybe it could be the social studies teacher. There's someone going to be on your team who you can count on to look and plant that seed, who can then be your advocates. There's always good people out there. They're just not always the people responsible for driving your kids' program.
Yeah, a tell sign is when you ask for something if they're nodding along with you. I know who the science of reading teachers are in meetings, because as soon as I start talking about structured literacy and where are you in the scope and sequence and all this, and we don't believe in F&P, they're sitting there nodding along and they don't care who's looking at them. And I know exactly who my ally is. So watch their body language.
Find your ally.
Yes.
I'm going to change our conversation just a little bit, because one of the other things that happens in middle school is parties. Parties begin to change. The birthday party where it's a lot of the class, or it's just all boys. Then all of a sudden in 6th grade, someone has the first official boy-girl party. And then at that party, something happens. How do we begin to have
What happens, Bill?
Yeah.
well,
Like, what happens?
yeah, well,
What happens?
I mean, I could talk about, I mean, Stacey's talked about her kids. My older boys, raising them in Brooklyn, by 8th grade, I'd been there and done that. It happens, and it's natural. Our kids are faced with these situations where they're going to have to make a decision with their friends, and there's a lot of peer pressure.
I tell my kids they can use me. I said, throw me under the bus. Throw me under the bus. My mom is so lame. She won't let me do anything, blah, blah, blah. Throw me under the bus and use me to get to help you.
Yeah. I did the same thing, offering the kids a way out. And often as parents, we can be the easy way out, making sure that their kids can call you from a party and there's some question that they could ask you that lets you know that they want to be picked up without them losing face in front of their friends.
One of the things I did when my kids are a little older than middle school, like high school, is I arranged with my best friend for her kids to be able to call me in any situation. I would go and pick them up and I would not ask any questions. I would get them home safely and I would not say a thing to their mother. Same thing the other way. They used it a couple of times and that ensured that they got home safely from whatever situation was not good,
Yeah, I did put my friends' numbers on my children's phones. So, and they are very comfortable with my friends. And so they will call them and ask them for help, or they'll call them and complain about me. But, either way.
I do also think you had said, Bill, like to be their ally. I think that they, even with this support of, if they have strong relationships with their parents and their parents' best friends, they're still going to find themselves in muddy water because and when that does happen, again, let's get you home, let's get you safe. we'll talk about this tomorrow. Nothing should be discussed when you are heightened. That will not go well at all. It really should wait like a good 12 hours. And then to be their ally, I have so many clients at this age who wish their parents would have approached them with, what happened? We heard from the teacher that blah, 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 or we heard from parent that you were, like, tell me about it. I want to hear from you rather than coming straight into it with, you were blah 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 and your phone's taken away, that being an ally, and taking your time with it too. I tell that to parents a lot. You don't have to come up with a consequence right away and know the best parenting thing to say and do right away. You can say, I don't, first of all, we're not going to talk about this tonight because we're not ready for it. And then tomorrow comes like, I still don't really know how I feel about it, what to say and do. You're not off the hook, but like I need to think about you. Like you don't have to respond right away.
And I learned that lesson the hard way. In a very difficult, I was angry and upset and dealing with the situation immediately. And this argument went on, and I finally realized and said out loud, I was just scared.
Well,
And I realized that so that I vocalized it, but then it also helped me approach the next time to not deal with it in the moment.
Mhm.
Sleep time heals a lot, and it gives not just us as parents perspective, but it also gives our kids a little bit of, they may not tell you, they might not admit that. But again, it gives everybody a little bit of perspective of what just happened, what happened last night. How did I get into that situation?
Yeah.
So that I
And
don't.
the words you say to them stay with them,
Yes.
so giving yourself that space really helps. I mean, I still hear from my 32-year-old about some of the things I said in middle school.
Yes. Yes. I mean, that's, so it's really important. Again,
Letting you know ahead of time so you don't get to
Yeah, and I do explain to my own kids that, hey, I'm trying to figure this out too. There's no manual on being a parent. I've never been a parent before. I I have, as you said, Bill, I'm scared of some things. So, and I'm not going to get this right, but know that I'm like working on it and I'm trying to, and I want what's best for you, and I just want to protect you, and we're gonna learn this together, and it's not going to be clean, but anyway.
You think about it when our kids are little, and if they run into the road, our first instinct is to scream at them,
Mhm.
get out of the road, because we're scared to death about
Right.
what may happen. And that's not what our kids need to be. Oh my gosh, startled it, so they come back. But they don't need that. Oh my gosh, it's the understanding. Oh, do you really realize what happened? There's a situation where we're not thinking clearly.
Mhm.
And when your kid's coming home from a party where they may have had their first drink, they may have experimented with marijuana, those aren't the times.
Mhm.
Those aren't the times. And I know I'm going a little soapboxy here. Just because we may have done these things as teenagers doesn't mean that we should say it's okay for our kids. Because the moment that we say, oh, I did that, and
Mhm.
the moment we validate what they've done, it's all okay.
Right.
It's all okay.
Well, now that we've totally freaked people out with
Right.
fifth graders about middle school, I before, because I know I do want to say a couple things about literacy and things to look out, parents to look out for. When is you're going to start getting a lot of pressure to switch to software and technology and less direct specialized instruction in literacy. And I can't urge you enough.
In writing too.
Yes. And yes, they're going to give you spell check, and they're going to give you, more and more technology. And you're going to say, my kids still can't spell. And they're going to be like, oh, but everything's on computers. So their life is all going to be chat GPT and spell check. And my answer is always, well, my child has to do PowerPoint presentations for you in Canva, and Canva does not have spell check or Grammarly. Then the response I get is, well, we just won't penalize them for spelling errors. And then I say, when my child has a job in the future, they will be penalized for spelling and editing error and grammar and punctuation errors. So it's something that I think everyone needs to look out for is Once you get into the middle school, they really start pushing the assistive tech, and they really start pulling back on the direct specialized instruction and literacy, and it becomes a big issue.
They
And
pull back on direct instruction in everything.
Yep.
I mean, especially literacy, but every area that your kid has been working on in elementary school with very specific, goals and objectives that go to exactly what their deficits are. It's gonna pull back. They're gonna try to pull back, make it homework help. They're just gonna work on curriculum based, work, and they'll kind of help them through the areas that they have problems with. That's not an effective way to move the ball forward. And best if you stop them in their tracks right at the beginning.
Yep.
what I'm help our families with is we still need remediation. It can't just accommodate them.
Mhm.
All
Right,
these
exactly.
all these assistive technologies are accommodate. There are so many more,
Mhm.
but our kids need to be skilled. Stacey's absolutely right. They have to be skilled now. It's great to be able to and learn how to use all of these resources, but I need to be skilled.
I mean, I don't mind. So if a kid their deficits are really, profound. And so if they're
And that's getting in the way of the free
right.
flow of learning or thought or whatever.
Right. So you want them to have access to the general fund of knowledge, right? And be able to understand what's being taught in social studies and respond. And so, there's like a balance between, you don't want it to take over the skills that they need to be demonstrating, but you do want to give them the access to the information,
Yep.
that they need to be part of the class.
Yes, that's where we're thoughtful. I will specifically put in
Yeah.
accommodations that they can use that technology for social studies class. They can use the no penalties for punctuation and spelling and grammar in social studies class, because I want them to learn social studies, but not in ELA, not in English. In English, that's where they have to work. That's where we can't do that. But yeah, goals start to switch from so and so will decode, blah 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 blah. So and so will encode. It starts to change to so and so will edit. So and so will, and that's what happens. So I want
teacher assistants.
yes, yeah,
Yeah.
Christine, I know we're running out of time. Are there any questions out there from our audience?
No, it's a very engaged group, but and the numbers keep growing, but no questions as of yet.
Okay.
Right.
Any last thoughts? You all mentioned some great books for parents, and not just parents, again, to recommend to their team, but those same books are really good for us as parents. Larry Steinberg wrote a book right after my older boys were past this, The Age of Opportunity. It's about the neuroscience of adolescence, which I think was really important. I use it with my teachers here. And then The Emotional Life of Teenagers, Lisa D'Amour, it's a newer book. She was on Inside Out 2. She was instrumental. So, I mean, that's been a really, that movie was hard for me to watch. I think it was so much was happening in that little movie. My 13-year-old was like, what's your big deal? This is just what, this is.
see, my teenagers liked it. They were like,
No,
oh.
he did. I was like, oh my gosh. And Henry's like, oh, this is great. Yeah. But she was really good in that too. And that's been very helpful for me as I help families through this time too. And we can share those lists with everybody if you want.
Yeah, I've got Ross Green, Larry Steinberg, Michelle Garcia Winters, The Emotional Life of Teenagers. What am I missing? That I put down.
I think her name is Elise Kuipers, Kuypers for zones of regulation.
Yeah. And Eli Leibowitz also is such a great resource.
Right now, JFS, Jewish Family Service, JFS is doing a free parent training group for parents with anxious kids. They're doing it right now, so I don't know if they're repeating it, but there's lots of resources out there. Going to your library, your public library, and asking them about resources for kids in middle school, resources for kids with this, the library is a great resource, even in 2024.
And Christine, if I may, just on behalf of self, if families out there have questions after this and are still thinking about all of this, I'm moving to middle school. I'm overwhelmed. You all overwhelmed me. You can reach out to us. Christine can farm those to me, or Emily, Meredith, or Stacey, and we can get questions and answer your questions that way as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. My email is in the chat. It is Christine, CHRISTINE at spedlegalfund.org. Happy to, forward any questions on that you have to any of our panelists. Thank you all for joining us this evening. This was a really, really insightful panel, even if we did get sidetracked on, on parties and drinking for like a wee bit there, Bill.
All right.
A little bit. I was like, where are
Real
we
though,
going here?
it's the other side of
I
middle
know it's true. No, it is.
Well,
It's
and then they come to me because, they're getting expelled. So,
yeah, exactly.
it was
So
relevant.
it was good. It's good to go there because it happens and it's real. Thank you all for joining us this evening. For middle school, are you ready for it? I actually don't think I am. Anyway, please join us for our next webinar on December 4th, Divorce and Special Education Law. And thank you again to our panelists, Stacey Tié, Meredith Braxton, Dr. Emily Altman, and our fearless leader, Mr. Bill DeHaven. Thank you all so much. Have a good night.
Thank you, ladies.
Night.
Have a great
Well,
night.
Bye.
Happy Thanksgiving.